Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project Copyrighted Edition for a video channel. Thanks for being here. And this is a missing person segment. This is going to be a little different. Every once in a while I'm going to try to throw a curveball at you and see if you're staying on your toes. Now, before I get deep into the facts, some people sent me some things. Hey Dave, of course you have to have these socks if you don't already. My sister and I love your videos about all these missing people and what it's really about. It all makes sense to us. Thank you immensely for your work and commitment. Sincerely, Donna and Jeanette. UFO taking up people. The Bigfoot socks. The sock company, Big Feet. Thank you very much. That is very kind, Donna and Jeanette. And then a very kind person sent this to Angie and I, some green tea. I love green tea. It's kind of one of those healthier teas. And then the ultimate green tea assortment. How kind. Superfruit tea, honey ginseng tea, and the Republic of Tea. That's great. Thank you so much, each of you. I'm very humbled by the kindness that I see and I feel from you guys. And you don't have to send me anything, trust me. I love you all, and I really live life don't expecting anything. Kind of the way things have been. Now, our website for buying books, NA, like North America, NA, bigfootsearch.com, go to the online store. Now, this book right here, how many people out there have read that? Missing 411 Law, Land, Air, Water. It's one of the few times I broach the topic of things that disappear in the air. Why is that important? It's important because it's one of those times where the only witnesses you have are the people that are in the plane. Yeah. And if you're looking for healthy young men, why not take an entire Army plane, entire Air Force plane? Because what's gone missing in water? Young, healthy males. And what did I cover here? Young, healthy males. Now, a plane that crashes and disappears, it may not seem unusual. And I get that. So it's up to me to put it together for you so you can see what we see in these incidents. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today is 3 different aircraft that disappear. All in the same state, all within a relatively close time frame, and I've never heard about these talked about anywhere, ever. So you're going to be the first. Let's start off. First of all, if I say SAC, S-A-C, it means Strategic Air Command. They are the ones that fly the skies with our big bombers, nuclear bombs. And they are really the ones that fly at the edge of darkness, right along the Russian border. It's a scary world out there in the middle of nowhere. Well, what I'm going to talk to you about right now is the Strategic Air Command RC-135E. Had a crew of 19. Went missing June 5th, 1969. It was a reconnaissance version of the Boeing 707. Yeah. Now folks, this is a big plane. Big plane. 4 big jet engines. went missing June 5th, 69. Last was seen at a place called Shemya Island in the Aleutian chain of Alaska. Plane was built in 1964. 32 were operational and had a crew of 27 max. Now this is what I want you to pay close attention to. It's 136 feet long, a wingspan of 130 feet, has 4 jet engines and sits 41 feet off the ground, and has a range of 3,000 miles. At the time, in 69, this was the most expensive plane in the Air Force. It had extremely advanced radar systems, and this plane could track a soccer ball in the air 300 miles away. When I heard that, immediately, I thought of orbs. Tic-tacs, right? And I wondered if in 1969, in Alaska, what were the number of UFO sightings they had? And don't tell me they didn't have any. Because in Alaska, one of the most famous ever UFO sightings was by a Japan Airlines freighter that was flying. The entire crew saw a huge UFO tracking them. And later on, there were FAA officials that came forward and said, yeah, we had something really strange in our radar, and essentially supported what the Japan Airlines crew said. Now, this isn't about that because they landed safely. But the plane flew into Shemya Island on routine flight. As it landed, they went out and did a check of the plane, and they found that they had some minor tail damage with some panels of the plane that were loose, etc. And Shemya Island, even though it's only 1 mile wide and 3 miles long, it has a very advanced airport there for Air Force reconnaissance. And they have a lot of maintenance there, and they have a lot of experts there. And they looked at the damage and they said, that's not serious. You're clear to fly it back to Eilerson Air Force Base near Fairbanks. Let me show you where this is. This is Shemya Island. This is the Aleutians. Now, the Russian border is just seriously almost right here. So what they were going to do is they were going to get back in their plane, take off, make a loop, fly back to the Air Force Base. And again, they were not flying any cheap rat trap. The most expensive plane in the Air Force at the time. So, the plane takes off, and as it's leaving, it's 30 minutes outside of Shemya. And the pilot, Major Charles Michaud from Drummond, Oklahoma. His co-pilot was Major Peter Carpenter from Fairbanks. These were probably two of the most highly trusted and competent pilots we had in the military at the time. Who else are you going to trust flying your most expensive, most technically advanced plane, right? So 30 minutes after leaving Shemya, Michaud gets on the radio and makes the following transmission to the Air Force Base. He says, Elmendorf Airways, Irene 92. Irene 92 was the call sign for that plane. Elmendorf Airways, Irene 92, experiencing vibration in flight, not certain of the emergency. End of quotes. Shortly thereafter, he later stated, going on oxygen and lowering altitude. And then right after that, the radio men hear a series of microphone clicks, and that ended at 10:22 a.m. Didn't hear anything more. Highly unusual. When I hear about vibrations, a lot of things I think about. Yeah, it could be catastrophic failure of the plane, but again, the plane is so far advanced, it's ridiculous. So, shaking, vibration. What could cause that? Well, when the plane didn't arrive at the Air Force Base, late that night, they sent up 3 Air Force planes, scrambled them, tried to keep raising Irene 92 on the air, couldn't, and then immediately they went into recovery mode, and they dispatched 15 planes that joined the search and rescue for Irene 92. That plane had several 20-man rafts that they could deploy. When they were searching on the 6th, the weather had wind at 25 knots and a ceiling. That means clouds were at 1,500 feet above the water. June 13th, 18 planes were still searching. No oil, no gas, no wreckage, no nothing. And there was a big series of Coast Guard cutters in the area. Remember this. Plane recently took off. It's loaded with fuel. When fuel gets on water, it floats. And you could see it from the air. It looks like a sheen. It's very obvious. Oil and gas float. Now, they didn't see anything. So on June 13th, they put another 18 planes up for 3 days. Nothing found. And on a plane like that, the seats float, the life rafts float. There's a lot of things built into that plane that would float. And we've seen other airplanes where the wings even float sometimes. They search until June 16th, 11 days out, and all searches were suspended. They hadn't found anything. Then July 2nd through the 8th, they put up more searches. Because this was such a huge plane and not finding anything didn't make sense, the rumors started to fly around that it flew into Russian airspace and it was shot down. Air Force said they guaranteed that that did not happen. And they had the radio transmissions from the pilots, and they had those people go on news and say, yeah, it was nothing about violence. And this plane routinely flew along the Russian-US border using its radar, trying to detect something that may be in the air. Now that happened June 5th, 1969. Never, ever, ever, never, ever found. So, I just drew a straight line from Shimmy Island to where they were going, up in Islison. Now, they could have flown from here to St. Paul to Dillingham to Islison. I don't know, and they didn't say what the track was. But the assumption is that it went down somewhere here on open ocean. And again, the most expensive plane, never found. Put that in your thinking caps. Hold your taters. Story number 2. North Dakota Air National Guard C-54. That's a 4-engine turboprop. This is it. Missing August 27th, 1969. And it left at 7:30 p.m. from Elmendorf Air Force Base. 199th Fighter Group. Now, up in Alaska in August, stays light until 2 in the morning, maybe. It stays light forever. So it takes off, and the North Dakota National Guard had brought up 500 men to stay at Elmendorf to go through training. And it was a 15-day deployment. Now, this C-54 that I showed you was the first plane I've ever heard that long ago that carried what they called an emergency beeper transponder, which would activate if the plane was in trouble. You know what I'm talking about. Personal locator beacon, plane beacon. Now the crew, superstars. Here's who they were. The pilot was Captain Eddie Stewart. He was an instructor pilot, just not a normal pilot, an instructor pilot out of Fargo, North Dakota. A co-pilot was Lieutenant Colonel Don Freslin, also from Fargo. And they also brought along a flight mechanic, Master Sergeant Ingvald Nelson from Fargo. And they had one passenger, a Master Sergeant named Floyd Broadland from Walpaton. And again, this was a training flight from Elmendorf Air Force Base to King Salmon Air Station. Should take about an hour and 20 minutes. Now, that same plane that they were flying had been used the prior week to ferry in news crews and dignitaries from North Dakota to Alaska to view this training that was going on. What did that tell me? That tells me that the National Guard probably would have used their best plane to ferry those people in just so nothing would happen. So keep that in the back of your head. So August 27th, the plane never arrived at King Salmon. This is important, folks. Here's the route from Elmendorf to King Salmon. It goes over a very, very, ultra very strange lake called Lake Iliamna on this route. Now, if you've never heard of Lake Iliamna, it's supposed to have lake monsters, flying cryptids. It's a very strange place. So, the plane didn't arrive. August 28th, brutal winds and rain that was going sideways at 47 miles per hour grounded nearly every plane that was available to search. They had 2 to 4 miles of visibility. The Alaska Civil Air Patrol put up some of their bigger planes, and the Air Force put up their biggest planes because the weather was so bad, and no small planes were searching. The Alaska Air Command was searching near Cook Inlet and Iliamna Lake. The plane carried 8 hours of fuel for just a 1 hour and 10 to 20 minute flight. So they started searching, they got nothing. August 29th to September 2nd, the weather stayed horrific. And all the articles said the same thing. It was horrible conditions to search. Only larger planes flew for those 4 days. September 3rd, the weather reports that spoke of this missing plane stated that an Aleutian low had hit the coastal area of Alaska and again restricted air ops. But still, the biggest aircraft they had for the Air Force were going up, and 8 aircraft searched daily. The Alaska Air Command were getting frustrated. This is a big plane. They should be finding it. And the Air Force requested a special photo ops aircraft assigned to the Strategic Air Command. And this plane had the ability to photograph the ground as it flew over it, and it would look for irregularities and later analyze the photos. The plane got there, went out, and for 2 days photographed several different routes in its entirety of what this plane flew. Plane then sent the photos to the Strategic Air Command headquarters in Omaha. Several days later, SAC came back and said that the photos were so bad they could hardly see anything, and they couldn't decipher anything unusual from the good photos that they had. Wow. October 11th, weather stayed unsettled 100% of the time since the disappearance. And they gave up the search. That was a long search. And in August, pretty warm conditions for Alaska. It's probably the best weather you're going to find in certain areas. So not finding anything that's sitting on the ground, I think everyone was thinking that must have gone in the ocean, must have gone in the lake. That's why we're not seeing it. That's what everyone always says. Always. Well, January 13th, 1970, every crew member on that flight was legally declared dead. So family and could get their benefits and move on. A couple years later, August 2nd, 1972, a civilian pilot was flying along and spots wreckage on a ridge 2,500 feet above sea level. He thought it seemed odd. To him, it looked fresh. It was definitely a plane. And when he landed, he called the Alaska Air Command, told them the coordinates, the location, and Alaska Air Command called the Army Mountain Division and had them go in and search. Well, the Army came back and said that the plane was severely damaged and burned. And in 1972, the exact location of this wasn't given. And in fact, the research we did, we still couldn't find the exact location of where this was. A couple things about this. Weather nonstop during the search. What's that all about? That's pretty odd. I mean, Alaska gets a lot of bad weather, but that's still really odd. And then, how could this plane sit on that ridge from August 69 to August 72, 3 years, and only one pilot ever sees it? I think that's odd. But really, the coup de grace for me, the one that I said, I can't believe that, is that the plane had a locator beacon on it. Now, most planes, big planes like that one, have a device built into the plane that activates upon impact. And the pilots don't have to do anything. Now, when I was young and my dad had a plane, we had one of those lake location devices as well. It was about this big. It was big. And my dad explained to me one time that even if you dropped this on the ground, it wouldn't activate. It takes such a sudden hit that it's been designed to transmit upon impact. Well, if the passenger plane pilot saw this C-54 on the ground, recognized it's a plane, then it wasn't 100% destroyed. There was conflicting information that there might have been some type of fire in conjunction with the crash, but they just confirmed that that was the plane. Now, I could never find anything about how many bodies were found, if any were found, etc. But now, hold your taters. So, that North Dakota Air National Guard plane I just described to you disappeared August 27, 1969. As we're doing the research on that plane, all of a sudden it says, searchers are now looking for 2 planes. What? Well, the C-54 was going from Elmendorf to Salmon Arm. Or King Salmon, rather. Elmendorf to King Salmon. Just 4 days after the C-54 disappears, a young man, 19 years old, named Tommy Tennyson, took out a Cessna 150G. He left August 31st, 1969. The plane was owned by Western Alaska Airlines. A 150G, I'll show you a picture of it. 150G is a 2-seater, 100 horsepower, range of about 300 miles, can cruise about 90 miles an hour. It's a very, very popular training plane. Tommy had 82 flight hours and was going to fly near Lake Iliamna. You heard that right, folks. Let me explain this. So the C-54 flies from Elmendorf to King Salmon but never gets there. Tommy is living in Dillingham, which is right there next to King Salmon, and is flying over Lake Iliamna, which is right there. Parallel flight paths, crossing the same location. I think that is highly unusual. I'm sorry if you don't, but I do. Now, that area where Tommy's flying to is being covered every day by aircraft looking for the C-54. And articles stated they disappeared in the same corridor. Now, what's odd about this is everything stated that the weather during the time they're looking for the C-54 was horrendous. But you see, that really started on September 2nd. And Tommy disappeared on August 31st, just before the weather really turned bad. But then once he disappeared, and the C-54 disappears, now the weather's horrid. So Tommy was not instrument rated. He didn't return, and his family notifies the Alaska State Troopers. Troopers notify Civil Air Patrol. And now they're searching for the Cessna and the C-54, which made it pretty easy to look for 2 targets at the same time. I've never heard of that. Honestly, I've never heard of that. Flying the same area, disappeared 4 days apart. And here's the real kicker. The C-54 and the Cessna 150G never found. Ever. I'm sorry. The 150G was never found, and the RC-135E was never found. The C-54 was found on that ridge 3 years after the accident. So, we have 3 aircraft missing between June 5th and August 31st. All within the same general area of Alaska. And 2 out of the 3 are never found. So, let me hold this for you So you can kind of see it. So the one group was flying from Shemya to Eilerson and disappears out here. Over here, just right in this area. So this is Dillingham. This is where Tommy disappeared. Dillingham. See it right there. He disappears and he's flying towards Iliamna right there. Iliamna right here. And the other is flying this way, and they disappear. So what was going on in the skies over Alaska between August 27th and August 31st when two planes disappear, never are found? One of the planes is loaded up with military personnel, has an emergency beeper. I don't get it. Now, a lot of things about Alaska that make it a very intriguing state to me. Now, first of all, weather can get bad there, no doubt. And a lot of times, it's pilot error that takes these planes down. I get that. But I'm sorry that RC-135E had the best trained pilots in the world flying it, and that C-54 had one of the most experienced crews in our military flying that. So I don't really care what you think. Planes shouldn't be going down under those conditions. And if you don't go down over water, where are you going to go down? On land. And if you're going down on land, you should be found. And I'll explain it one more time. When a plane hits the water, wings break off, planes disintegrate. They aren't designed to hit the water. They break apart. Gas comes out, oil comes out, it all floats around. And that's how you find an aircraft crash under normal conditions. Now, I know all of you are thinking, Dave, what about MH370? That's the $1 million mystery aircraft that disappeared. So, Tommy Tennyson, I've never heard his story talked about ever, anywhere. And in conjunction with the C-54, a lot of weirdness there. And for the most expensive plane in the military at the time to go down and disappear and never be found, I'm sorry, that dog don't hunt. Thanks for being here. Remember, kindness costs you nothing. It's a kindness revolution. We need to be nice to each other. It costs us nothing. And you are appreciated. And please share this video on your social media. I'd be grateful. Until next time, Paulides out.